Happy Friday, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening. Well, it's Friday, another week, another live. And thank you all for being tuned in. And this evening, we are going to talk about the Congo. We're going to talk about justice, as always, not as an abstract concept, but as a matter of life and death for the million of Congolese people trapped in a war the world has chosen to ignore. The conflict in the occupied Congolese territory is one of the deadliest on earth. Behind every number is a human being, a family, a village, a future stolen. This is not a random violence. It is systematic, it is coordinated, and is too often enabled by powerful states and multinationals hiding behind silence, diplomacy, and profit. According to Congo's own civil society in North Kivu, in the Kivu region, over 11,000 people have been killed since January of this year alone. And at the heart of this crisis is the M23 AFC rebellion, an armed groups organized and backed and supported by Rwanda. Just days ago, they issued an alarming reports. The civil society in Congo issued an alarming report. Over 11,000 people have been killed by AFC and M23 in areas under the control since January 1st, 2025. In Lubero, 1,500 people have been massacred since 2023, including 87 deaths this year alone, 144 of them in areas occupied by M23. In Rutshuru and Masisi, over 200 civilians were killed between January and May of this year, 73 in Rutshuru and 76 in Masisi. In Goma and Nyahagongo, civil society reported 9,000 deaths and 3,500 injuries during the same period of time. And the brutality doesn't really stop there with the killings. There are reports of abductions and forced recruitments and of youth from Ruchuru, Goma, Nyiragongo, and Masisi. These children are reportedly being taken to training camps in Humagabo and Chanzu, described by the civil society as death centers. They are slowly being killed there, and customary leaders are being also threatened. Land are being seized, and the entire communities are currently living under occupation. So these are not just speculation; they are documented. Amnesty International most recent report confirmed what many Congolese have been crying out for years. The M23 backed by Rwanda is committing serious war crimes and human rights abuses. The M23, backed by Rwanda, which has waged a brutal campaign in areas that Human Rights Watch now calls the occupied Congolese territory. These tactics used by Rwanda, used by M23, are not just military, they are terroristic. And yet, instead of global outrage, we see global partnerships. The NBA, one of the most influential culture institutions in the world, is still proudly in business with Rwanda, a regime fueling a proxy war that has displaced hundreds of thousands of people in the Congo. Why is the world okay with that? And if this wasn't enough, on August 30th, 2023, a couple years ago, hundreds of peaceful Congolese protesters were gunned down in Goma, but this time by the Congolese government, by the Congolese Presidential Guard. Amnesty International has called it what it is, a massacre. We will talk about both on this show because justice cannot be selective. Not selective for the M23, not for Kagame, Paul Kagame, and not for the Congolese government either. With us is someone who has worked tirelessly for an organization that documents these crimes and push for the world to act. So please, everyone, help me. We're gonna join Kate Wilson with Kate Hickson with us. Kate, how are you doing?
Hi, thanks for having me on, although hate that it's under these circumstances.
Yes, I really appreciate the time that you took for the work that you've been doing around Congo, around Africa, and also the time that you're taking to have this conversation with us and to break down uh, Amnesty International perspective on the conflict. Without further ado, we're gonna go to the first part where I'm gonna ask you questions so we can break down what's going on in the Congo, and then we will be joined by a panel of three, I would say, amazing human beings, Congolese folks, friends, and activists to also kind of break down what you will be sharing with us today. So let me start with this, Kate. The May 2025 report. What were some of the key findings about the M23 human rights violations, and what really struck you the most?
Yeah, sure. So our researcher spoke to people documenting between February and April 2025. So kind of the height of the new incursion further into Eastern DRC this year, talking to 18 civilian detainees, all men who had been held unlawfully in M23 detention sites. Some of the testimony that's come out of that report is very disturbing. 8 of the detainees said that they saw fellow detainees die in detention, likely from torture and harsh conditions. They were held in overcrowded, unsanitary cells without sufficient food, water, healthcare, and most were held incommunicado and denied access to their lawyers. And so what you saw was really just kind of a implementation of terror against civilians. There would be claims that either they were civil society critiquing the M23 or Congolese government officials, but there would never be any evidence actually presented. There was never, any trials. And so what you see is M23's been claiming they've brought law and order to Goma in these places. But instead, what we're just seeing is continued abuse against civilians.
Yes, and something to really point out. I think a couple days, maybe a few days after Amnesty International published a report, we saw the M23 come forward and essentially denied the allegation, not just what pertains to the with Amnesty International, but also what was put out by the Congolese government, which at the time I think they estimated between 3,000 and 9,000 people have died. And the Minister of Information actually talked about 9,000 folks that died as the result of the assault in both Goma and Bukavu. What is Amnesty International response to that? They are reviewing the numbers and saying that they are following human rights. They said that it's not 9,000, it's 824. If I'm not mistaken, what is Amnesty International thoughts on that?
So Amnesty submitted this evidence to the M23, tried multiple times to contact them ahead of releasing the report and received no comment. So obviously, we are very diligent in terms of how we verify information. And so, I think just a press statement of denial is not sufficient in terms of disputing what's happening.
So Amnesty International actually is actively trying to, or tried to reach out to the M23 to discuss or to, share their reports and trying to have their perspective. And you saying that they have not provided any answer or response until today.
As far as I'm aware, certainly ahead of publication of the report. I haven't spoken to a researcher in a few days, so if there's been an update, I have not seen it. But that's standard Amnesty practice. Whenever we're going to release a report, we always share it with anybody that we're documenting in order to publish their response along with it, if they choose to respond.
And because we talk about the conflict or the war, and we keep saying, and that has been documented not just by Amnesty International, but even Human Rights Watch and even the United Nations, that Rwanda is actually the one supporting or funding the M23. Is there any direct contacts regarding to the human rights abuse that Amnesty International trying to have with the government of Rwanda directly, or you guys have been just trying to talk to M23, who are, I think, headquarters right now is in Goma?
So the report that we released in May actually noted also that Congolese who have gone to Rwanda have also been subject to arbitrary arrest, and that in February, I think at least 3 Congolese men were detained at the border and handed over to M23 fighters in Goma. So we have, anytime we're documenting, we're sharing with everyone who we're listing in the report. And I don't believe that we heard back there either.
Yes, and one details I believe I think it was in the report or maybe it was some other that really struck me was how civilians were held, right? Like held in schools, at their homes, and even sometimes their homes turn into to prison, and this really is a state-backed terror, and yet global powers still to call Rwanda as stabilizing force, right? And we saw. Uh, that the U.S. has been trying to put like a deal. Uh, does Amnesty International see in any way, in any shape or form, the involvement of the U.S. government as something that is actually easing the conflict, or actually making it worse, or being neutral? What's Amnesty International position?
I mean, we don't have an official position. Obviously, we are in favor of anything that brings pressure to help protect civilians, increase humanitarian funding. You know, we've seen drastic reductions in humanitarian funding in Eastern DRC because of what's happened with USAID and whatnot. Uh, with the deal that the contours of the deal that came out earlier this week, I'm personally concerned that justice and accountability don't really seem to be taken into account. And so while there's nothing wrong with looking for ways to mutually benefit economically, you can't just make an economic deal and not deal with what's the justice and accountability, not just for what M23 has done, but also Rwanda, but also the Congolese government themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know Amnesty International doesn't advocate for any form of government, but in the light of what has been published regarding the human rights violation of the war crimes, I think that's actually the term to use. What essentially is Amnesty International telling or saying to, I would say, in one part, the government of Rwanda, and the other, actually, the Congolese folks within the M23? What is Amnesty International really telling that group? So,
I mean, we talk about you can't be arbitrarily detaining civilians. You should not be harming civilians in conflict. We obviously saw a lot of civilian deaths when the M23 first took over Goma and Bukavu. So, in any kind of conflict, we would expect parties to adhere to international humanitarian law. And we're not seeing that, not only with the M23 and Rwanda, but even the Congolese forces have used weapons that tend to have a wide blast radius and so are more likely to harm civilians. And so, you know, we continue to see that on all sides and need parties to protect civilians, for humanitarian aid to come in and for
so,
justice and accountability for any of these crimes committed.
mhm. So the Congolese government talks, or the civil society has been trying to also in their way document some of the human rights violation happening, and the death happening, and really that brings us to how other multinational companies, I would say powerful, and I said at the beginning, are essentially supporting uh, tacitly, at least, right? The Rwanda governments, and that brings us to the NBA and Amnesty International launched a campaign, essentially urging the NBA to end its partnership with Rwanda. Can you tell us more about that and why that is important?
Yeah, sure. So first, for clarity, our campaign is not asking for the NBA to cut ties with Rwanda, but they need to do due diligence around the partnership. So I think it was back in February, wrote to the NBA and asked what due diligence had been done, particularly if there was any heightened due diligence since the conflict escalated. And the response back really just noted that they were following State Department guidelines, which is not sufficient. The UN has guidelines for business and human rights in conflict and heightened due diligence, and that was not mentioned, and that process was not clear in the communication. And so, you know, given that UN reports have documented that conflict minerals are entering Rwanda, and given that Rwanda is allegedly paying something, I think, like $7 million a year for the privilege of the NBA partnership, the NBA should really be ensuring that it's not being paid with revenue from conflict minerals, or that its partnership is in any way, fueling harm. And I think what's particular about the NBA is here in the US, they really pride themselves on their civic justice work, but they also have a responsibility to think about the impact of their international partnership, and adhering to whether or not the State Department says it's legal is not a sufficient bar.
Absolutely. And so you started a petition particularly for that. And what are you asking folks to do in that petition?
So in that we sent a little over 1,000 signatures from the petition to the NBA, and it's showing people across the U.S. calling on the NBA to do renewed due diligence and ensure that they are not either benefiting from the conflict through, if Rwanda's payment is as a result of conflict minerals, or somehow helping the conflict in any way. So just asking them to do the due diligence as outlined by the UN guidelines and actually ensure that their partnership is not causing harm.
Absolutely. And folks joining us, we are with Kate Hickson, the advocacy director for Africa at Amnesty International. And there is that petition, and that I'm putting out there, and you can see. And please just type Amnesty International NBA petition for y'all to join. Put your information and put your signature, and join us into taking action for human rights, asking the NBA to review the partnership essentially with Rwanda, making sure that the money that it gives to Rwanda, or the money that it receives, actually the money that it receives, does not come, or does not come from conflicts. It's not a result of conflicts, either from the illegal trade of minerals or exploitations. So I just wanted to say this, that you can't really build, you know, courts in Kigali, and do NBA games in Kigali, in Rwanda, while the people are being tortured just across the borders. And that's the choice that the NBA is making right now. And KX, and thank you for actually saying that and clarifying that you're not asking the NBA to stop, but you're asking them to do due diligence. And the NBA shakes the hands with Kagame. They turn their backs on the Congolese people. That there needs to have some sort of uh, vetting system, or some sort of system that makes sure that in any way, shape, or form, that the NBA does not turn into being a accomplice of the war crimes that are being perpetrated in the Congo. And like I said at the beginning, we're not just gonna talk about uh, M23 or Paul Kagame or Rwanda and also the NBA. But there was another report that was released, I think it was early this year, or maybe at the end of last year, on the August 30th massacre. And just for the background for folks, the population in Goma, that was back in 2023, they were tired, they were fed up of the, I would say, inefficiency of the United Nations peacekeeping force in the Congo. The Congolese population was seeing the M23, or the rebels, advancing and marching toward Goma, killing in Congolese regions, um, rising, and that was with complete impunity, with complete, I would say, laissez-faire from not just the Congolese government, but also the United Nations peacekeeping force, MONUSCO. So then they decided to gather and protest, and asking for the departure of the UN. And that protest ended up in a bloodshed, in a massacre, and then the Congolese government deployed the Presidential Republican Guard and killed the people that were peacefully gathering. And Amnesty International did write a report actually going in details regarding that. Kay, can you please tell us more about what that report, first of all, the events, and going diving into that event or that incident or that massacre, and what the people, the audience watching us right now should learn from that.
Yeah, so that report, I believe, came out in November, December last year, and looked at the massacre that happened against a large number of Wazalendo protesters, not to be confused with the Wazalendo armed militias, that happened when they were planning to protest the failures, as you mentioned, of MONUSCO. And so the report kind of documents both the timeline, the communications between the United Nations and the Congolese forces, as well as uh, the killing of peaceful protesters, and kind of disputing some of the narrative that had initially come out about that particular protest. And in that, because the report came out quite some time after I think a year and a half after the massacre occurred, details a lot of things that still need to happen in terms of justice and accountability. While one colonel who was the commander in North Kivu at the time was convicted in connection with the killings, there still hasn't been, there's a general and a major who haven't been suspended, and they need to be suspended and investigated. And they also need to be doing these investigations in line with regional and international standards, and we haven't seen that either. And then, of course, also, as the report outlines some concerns we had in terms of kind of the UN engagement with the government around this. And so the UN Department for Peace Operations really needs to look into the role that its own leadership played in the events that led to this massacre.
That's incredible. And I was actually going through footages that, and I was trying to figure out if I should actually show it. These are never seen before footages of of the massacre when it happened. And again, it was the um, Congolese government involved into that. I wanted to ask you if you can, I can kind of like go back, if may allow, I may be allowed to do that, to go back into the involvement on both the Congolese government and the Rwanda government in what is now obvious, the killing of civilians. It has Amnesty International documented the involvement of any nations that are providing weapons to either parties and that contributed to the killing of civilians? Anything that you are aware of?
Unfortunately, we have not been able to do that documentation, but I believe that others have.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. And really, just thank you again, Kate, for the time. I'm not sure if you have maybe one more thing that you want to ask or tell the folks, the audience, because before I can, I know I have like maybe 6 minutes of your time and bring other folks on the panel, but I wanted to also give you the chance to say something and appeal to the audience.
Yeah, I would encourage everyone not only to sign the petitions we have up if they haven't and they're able, but this is something that is very interesting to members of Congress, to the administration right now, although maybe not for the right reasons. And so, particularly among the Congolese diaspora and those in the U.S. who are wondering what they can do, making sure that elected officials are hearing from you, that any kind of deal is made, we need to make sure that the Congolese people are included and actually benefiting from kind of any economic deals, and that justice and accountability is included, because if not, we're not going to end this cycle of impunity.
Yes, and thank you so much for your time, and I appreciate again the work that you've been doing, not just for the Congo but for Africa in general. And yeah,
Yeah, thanks for having me.
thank you. And joining, that was Kate Hickson, y'all. the advocacy director for Amnesty International, and I'm gonna bring up. I think we're gonna have a full panel today to kind of like break down what has been shared real quick right now. So the first person is Yakil. Yakil is the co-founder of Congolese Action Youth Platform, and he's also the coordinator of General Cause. He's an artist and a really good, I would say, big brother of mine. Yakil, how you doing?
Hi guys, how are you? You okay? Thank you for having me.
I'm good. And then the next guest is Jessica. Is the founder of African Diaspora Connection and a member of Action for Congo DRC Diaspora Desk, the largest uh, the largest the largest US-based network of advocates for the Democratic Republic of the Congo DRC. She's a doctoral candidate and a seasonal public administration and African development practitioner with over decades of experience supporting organizations and managing multi-million dollar programs across more than 20 countries in Africa. And y'all, let me welcome Jessica. Jessica, how are you doing?
Hi, Gaitan. Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing well considering everything that's going on in our country. Thank you.
Yes, thank you all for kind of like joining us to comment what has been said. I'm gonna go with you, Yakil. So, you heard Kate what she kind of gave overview of what's going on in Congo. We discussed about the M23 and then around the government's involvement. We also touch on the NBA and then how Amnesty International is asking the NBA to review its partnership and do more due diligence to make sure that the war crimes or the human rights violation is not, excuse me, profiting them in any way. What is, and then also the Congolese government's also involvements with the August 30th massacre, which was a couple years ago, but still really relevant because we're talking about the same area right now occupied. So I'm going to start with you, Yakil. What was your thoughts? What's your takes on what Kate just shared with us?
Well, there is a lot that Kate has actually said. What I probably would like to focus on is obviously the fact that a lot of civilians have been tortured and denied access to solicitors, to lawyers, and which goes against their basic human rights. And while the petition that being done with the NBA, we have something similar. This side of the world in the UK, where we are trying to also stop visit Rwanda with PSG, the football team, and also Arsenal, English football team. You probably call it soccer, and try to stop the visit Rwanda sponsorship to happen. So, which is very good. And again, to the more people sign the petition, and I believe there'll be a vested interest from the owners of the NBA to take a look at it. But also, there was another point, because then again, there is that deal that Rwanda, the Congo, and the USA are signing. And what Kate had rightly said, is yes, it's good for the economic benefits of the country, but we have to remember that justice and accountability of on both parts needs to be considered. So I agree with most of the points that Kate has said.
Jessica, I saw you nodding.
Yeah, no, I agree as well. I mean, the escalation of violence and human rights abuses highlighted by the Amnesty report just underscored the need for accountability, for perpetrators and justice for victims. I mean, we see that unfortunately, right, even despite all these peace agreements, right, the violence has been escalating, right? Again, the repetition of the definition of insanity is repeating the same things over and over again, right? Like, at what point this has been done before. And so our group, is really focused on amplifying, as Kate mentioned, Congolese voices and influencing policy. At the end of the day, nobody's coming to save us. This is an African problem that needs to be solved by Africans, a Congolese problems that needs to be solved by Congolese. That's why I started my platform, which is wonderful. The wonderful thing about, Action for Congo DRC Diaspora Desk is that it's a coalition, right, of different folks who have different initiatives really coming together. Us really locking in and collaborating is the only way that we will solve our problems. This is, again, this massacre that happened in August of 2023 by the Congolese government. It again just shows the core issue, right, is the unfortunate elites continuing to pillage our country, selling off our country. And it happens in so many African countries. So I think just if we have to, I would love to connect with Yakil, find all of us. My vision is just all of Africans, initiatives, just collaborating and really locking in and, solving our own problems from the bottom up, grassroots up. Again, nobody's coming to save us. We cannot continue depending on institutions that were formed to, extract from our natural resources. The UN, I'm sorry, is not going to save us. Like none of these, the African Union is funded by the West. Like none of these organizations and external powers that have subjugated us are going to save us. So it's time for us to lead these efforts. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. And Yakil, you are the coordinator, right? I would say, of Genocast, Genocide for Economic Gain, and in your own way, as member of Genocast, you guys are also being somehow commemorating what y'all call genocide for economic gain. And I'm not sure if y'all saw, probably gonna put it there on the screen. I had it somewhere about the Human Rights Watch recent report. I don't know if you saw that. That talks about the M23 forcibly transferring civilians, to Rwanda, Congolese civilians. Um, so how? So you have on one end, you have Amnesty International documenting the war crimes and the torture of civilians, and on the other hand, you have the Human Rights Watch also doing essentially the same. So what would you say that aligns compared to like what Genocost has been doing?
Well, thank you for the question. So, Genocast, it is a campaign that CAYP, which stands for Congolese Action Youth Platform, launched back in 2013. So we looked around on what was happening in the Congo, and then we identified that the reason why a lot of the Congolese people were being killed was because of the natural resources that the country has had. We've also seen patterns that happen not just recently in the past 30 or 34 years, but we also went back up to Leopold II during the colonial rules, and the sad period when we had the maimed hands and the severed hands to collect the red rubber, which the author Adam Hochschild well said in his book, The King Leopold's Ghost. So we looked at the history of Congolese people, and we've noticed that is because of the rubber, then later on the copper, and then cobalt, and then coltan more recently, and now we're talking about green energy. And Congo has been at the center of so many revolutions. It's been the lungs of the planet. Unfortunately, the life of a Congolese person is not looked the same way as precious as the diamond and the gold that's been taken. So Congolese Action Youth Platform back in 2013, we thought of a way to commemorate, to remember the people that have died in the long history of violence. And that is how the Genocost came about. And we named it the Genocide for Economic Gain, which is Genocost. So in recent days, with what the Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch are actually doing, you need proofs. In a way, they are kind of they do help us, because there is a work of justice to be done with the general cause, the campaign that we have is to have the 2nd of August being remembered as a commemoration day. That's one part, but there is also, we want to seek justice for the millions of people who have been killed, as detailed in the mapping report that the UN had published. So you also, at one point, you will need proofs. You will need people who are actually been on the ground, who have the manpower or the information or the data that these organizations do have, and then that is accessible to people, so we can go with facts and not just speculation and not just on social media. So the work that Amnesty International has been doing over the years is quite important, and that they can be important partners as well in our fight for justice.
Yes, thank you so much. And Jessica, Yakil kind of presented the work that the Genicast has been doing. Genicast is on the Congress Action Move platform to kind of like seek justice, not just commemorate, but also seek justice. You're doing the exact same work, I would say, within the U.S. But what are the actions that one the Action for Congo or the DRC Diaspora Desk has been doing in here in the U.S., right, and mostly in the hills in the D.C. area? And what is your response to this report that shows that the M23 armed groups are forcibly transferring civilians?
Yeah, so we really are focused on, again, amplifying the voices of Congolese people and starting to influence policy. We've noticed that the Rwandese government has been doing this, for a long time. They have had a voice in Congress, and so we engage with Congress, members of Congress, mayors, governors, and key organizations to demand action on the crisis in DRC. Through these efforts, we push for accountability, justice, and lasting engagement. We also organize events, advocacy events. We have an advocacy training coming up because we noticed that, unfortunately, in our community, there's just a lack of engagement. There's a lot of trauma, unfortunately, and trying to mobilize us is something that is challenging. So, we're trying to organize events and make these engagements digestible to the community, because when it comes to congressional engagement, it's all about numbers, right? And if you're not showing up, you're not going to be taken seriously. We issue open letters to raise awareness about the situation in Congo. We call out international inaction, and we respond to urgent developments, again, such as congressional meetings, official press releases, civil society reports. We also partner, lead and partner on powerful demonstrations to raise global awareness. So we just did a march, an International Women's Day, at the Rwandan embassy, and then proceeded to the White House, so to raise awareness of what's going on with women in Congo, the rape being used as a weapon of war for the last 30 years. We again really. We just had one of our successes was we helped draft and push for a letter sent by Rep. Olszewski, with signing from Sarah Jacobs, Sheila McCormick, Rep. Sarah Jacobs, Sheila McCormick, Jonathan Jackson, and Pramila. We sent that to Masad Boulos on May 29th to ask for clarity on the U.S. role in peace negotiations between DRC and Rwanda. We know that we have, the peace deal the mineral deal coming up between DRC and the U.S. So we're, again, pushing for, Congolese voices at the table, civil society voices at the table. We've met with, again, these engagements have also led to other letters like Sarah Jacobs early on when the violence was really ramping up, in January and the preceding months. We had her, write a letter, issue a statement as well. So, that's there's
a lot that y'all doing.
Yeah, we're really trying. We're trying to build power. We know that the Congolese government, unfortunately, is, there's just you're also perpetrators in this, right? And so and we understand that nobody's coming to save us, as I mentioned before, right? We have to start really showing up and build that power. And we have so many experts, so many brilliant people, that there's just no excuse for us to continue allowing the exploitation of our continent, of our country.
Yeah, I'm not sure if our brother Gedeon is in the backstage with us, but just let me know if you're there. But I wanted us to really comment on this report because Amnesty International kind of like dive into the war crimes in terms of the torture and just some of the things that are really graphic. And I was reading it again uh, regarding the killing, right? And let me see if I can really find uh, that one right here. It says another. I don't know if y'all can see. Probably. Let me just zoom in. Yes, another detainee at different sites said that he saw the M23 fighter kill two detainees. The M23 brought out a hammer and hit him in the ribs. He died on the spot. So there are just some of the things that the M23 is doing, and I'm literally trying to even find the motive behind why are they even organized as armed groups in the first place. Jessica, can you tell us anything about that you know?
So we've also we try, as I mentioned, engaging with we engage with experts, and we did a video interview where we counter misinformation, and by interviewing a Dr. Kibiswa, who is a conflict resolution expert Congolese and has been studying the just dynamics between Rwanda and DRC, especially colonial times up to now, and obviously we know the motive is is control of the natural resources, right? It's all about money, especially on that side. Has been a history of, unfortunately, Rwanda trying to get more territory in Congo, going back to pre-colonial times. The Kingdom of Rwanda, we actually shared on our Action for Congo Instagram the video of the professor, really going into detail about just this dynamic, how the Kingdom of Rwanda was smaller before colonization. And then after colonization, they gained more territory, right? Gisenyi and another city, which was in Congo originally. And so this is just speaking of the motive, right? There's just been, again, a century efforts in controlling the territory because it's so rich in minerals, right? So I would say that is the motivation. That's always been the motivation. And Rwanda, unfortunately, have used propaganda, right, misinformation, to say that no, this war is to recoup, it's about territorial integrity, which is false. And that actually Ronnie Jackson, there was a congressional briefing with different Congress folks talking about the situation in Congo, and he reiterated that propaganda. And we actually responded to that video, to that statement with factual, expert-led analysis, didn't confronting that, right? Saying how false it is. But this is the narrative, right? We're trying to take back our territory. This used to belong to Rwanda. And so factually, that is incorrect. You have to, it's up to us to educate the masses. This is and always been the motive. It's to gain territory due to the natural resources. And it's been going on for a very long time.
Yes, and let me bring up our next guest. He's actually from the region. Gedeon Baleke is a Congolese trained diplomat, business consultant, and youth advocate. He actually founded the Young Leaders to promote the UN Sustainable Development Goals and empower youth. And he's from the region, like I said. And Gedeon, let me ask you this. I'm not sure if you were in the backstage listening to the advocacy director for Africa at Amnesty International, Kate Hickson, that kind of was breaking down the reports on M23, the war crimes, the atrocities that the M23 is being accused of, the partnerships, the NBA partnerships with Paul Kagame of Rwanda, and also the August 30th uh, massacre that happened 2 years ago. Can you kind of like give us or explain to us? Uh, I guess Jessica kind of like say that what are the motive for the M23? Can you tell us what you know, being from that region, what has been the conflicts, why M23 are taking weapons, and if the reports that we've seen is actually matching with what you have heard from folks on the ground, because since you are from that region.
Well, thank you, Gaëtan. I came in a little bit later, and good evening to everyone. Um, I came in a little bit later, but I heard and I've read the reports of Amnesty International. They reported what really happened, and they are somehow more often impartial. So, based on what happened during the attack, perhaps with the Wazalendo Church, we saw the Garde Républicaine, the Republican Guard, killing people from the Wazalendo Church. We saw that happen. Um, I think the overall report is it's super factual, and I don't want to go through the report again, but it's more of providing an insight about the dynamic that really prevails in the region. As you said,
Hmm.
I'm from Bukavu. I originally grew up there. All my family members are from Bukavu and Goma, so I kind of know the region. I studied there before going abroad for following my studies and everything. Um, when we look at the dynamism of the conflict in that region, there's a lot of misinterpretation from people who actually don't live the day-to-day reality of the situation that prevails in the region. But when you look at the reports, such as the reports of Amnesty International, they write those reports based on factual events that really happen on the ground, because they have correspondents. I actually know one of their correspondents in Goma who does nice reports about the situation that prevailed in the region. So
But
I think,
why is
can you hear me?
M23 taking weapons? Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Are you able to hear me? Oh my God.
Yes.
Yes.
I think we lost Gedeon. Uh, but Yaki, let me ask you this, because we lost both Jessica and Gedeon. Let me ask you this: uh, why is the M23 taking weapons?
Uh, well, I mean, that's how is a rebellion. That's a armed rebellion, and it's a very complex situation. But it's all a masquerade, if you ask me. It's just a facade. They're trying to fight for certain rights. Less when you look at Corneille Nanga, who's member of Alliance du Peuple Congo (AFC). When you look, he is the one who actually uh, put Tshisekedi in power with Kabila. Reports have already said back in 2018 that Tshisekedi did not win the election. So now we having someone who's trying to claim that the president that's in power, that he allowed to be in power, that he should not have been in power. And then is the person Kabila who was there. So it's a whole a farce. It's all a comedy, and we know that their personal interest is the reason why they just grab the weapons, and it's a way to terrorize the people there. But like I think what Jessica from Action for Congo was what she was saying earlier is very true. The Balkanization of that region is the main reason for M23 to take weapons to bear arms. Is the only ultimate reason. Then again, you look at the history of our country. All these processes started from back from Mobutu with Bisengimana and the work that he actually did. by having changing the laws and having laws within the Congo that had led to the confusion that we have today when people say certain things that should not have been said in terms of the languages and so forth. And we live in some sort of amnesia. The whole country live in some sort of amnesia where we don't even realize or what happened in the past, even just 3 4 years ago. People saying, especially ministers, saying so many other things, and um, that's why it is important to just have the integrity, the honesty, to speak the truth. Like they said, the truth will set you free. But sadly enough, we have a lot of in the political leadership of the Congo, people who are, the truth is almost like a cancer to them, which is a sad truth. So I think if the M23 has taken arms and then they've got weapons and they're fighting the population that they want to save, that they are killing those same populations, and it's just a whole farce. I think as a black person, it makes you really sad. What I mean by just a black person, because the killing, the death of a black person, it seems to be of no value as opposed to someone from a Ukrainian, or even, this is not an Olympics of suffering, but what I'm trying to say is that we seems to be lower on that scale, on that level. Congolese people seems to be low on that scale because the atrocities that we have witnessed over the years, is that's the real injustice.
Yes, thank you. Now you're back. I was asking about the reason why the M23 is taking arms, and I could talk about that being masquerade, and kind of came back and explained the election and everything. But I wanted to ask you this particular question because they keep saying, and that's what I keep hearing, that particularly when it comes to Rwanda supporting or backing the M23, they see what's going on in the Congo, what they describe as ethnic tensions against the Tutsis minority to be, and also the fact that the Congolese government is backing or supporting the FDLR. They see that as an existential threat that needs to be dealt with, and therefore they are sending 7 to 12,000 people, as per latest reports documenting the issue. What can you tell us? What's your perspective, and what can you tell us from folks on the ground? Is there really uh, ethnic tensions against Tutsis in Eastern Congo, in the Kivus?
While they exist ethnic tensions in the Kivu region. Saying that there's no ethnic tensions in the Kivu is completely misleading and false. But having ethnic tensions doesn't mean that the community should resort to armed violence, or they should resort to rebellions in order to protect themselves. Or another foreign country should decide to come and perhaps violate the territorial integrity of another country by supporting an ethnic group just to claim that they are fighting for their self-determination and everything. That's not how it's supposed to happen. And geographically, when you look at the map of the Eastern DRC, namely the two provinces, North Kivu and South Kivu, when you look at a city of Bukavu, there's no any single reason that gives the legitimacy of the M23 to be in a city like Bukavu. The city of Bukavu is predominantly occupied by the Bashis, the Barega, and everything. There's no any ethnic tension from Bukavu to Kabare, all the area that is being controlled by the M23. There's no ethnic tensions. On the other hand, we have ethnic tensions, of course, in the whole plateau around Mulenge and stuff against the Bavira, Bafulero, and Banyamulenge. But it doesn't mean that all the Congolese are against Banyamulenge and stuff, or all the Congolese are fighting the people against the people in the Haut Plateau. It doesn't exist. I myself, I studied in Bukavu, as I said, and I went to school with Rwandese who used to cross the border every morning to come and study in our high schools. I had to go to school with people who are from the Banyamulenge, and they used to live in Bukavu. If you go in an area called Nguba, you have a whole area where Banyamulenge live, and they live there peacefully. They have their churches and everything. Of course, there have been certain tensions and stuff, and all the tensions occurred in the region because of the external interference, external interference which result into sometimes brutal massacres, massive killings of civilians. Because as we know, people from perhaps people who live in a city like Bukavu, they have a bad memory when it comes to Rwanda, because they've seen what the RDF has committed in the city of like Bukavu, what the RDF has done in Kabare, the massacre of Makobola, the way they've raped women. Those are things we've seen in the city of Bukavu by the Rwandese Defense Forces, the way they've tried to take over the cities several times in the past with Mutebusi, Laurent Kunda, with the CNDP. It was almost the same story. So I don't. I'm not trying to say that there is no ethnic tensions. There is ethnic tensions, and not just between Banyambulenge, Bavira, and Bafulero. There's ethnic tensions between the Bashi and Barega in South Kivu. But how come the Bashi and Barega have never resulted in a violence? Or you've never heard of Mushi being killed in Shabunda, or Bashi being attacked in Shabunda and stuff? If the people resulted to armed to be armed and using guns to, to start fighting against one another, is because there is external entities that interfered and that used the existing conflict to advance their interests. And that's the problem we have in the region. It's the same thing in Masisi and stuff, because those ethnic tensions, they can be easily resolved with the chef coutumier. They can be easily resolved with an appropriate mechanism of good governance, with, of course, the responsibility of the state. Uh, they can be easily controlled. But when you have external actors who've interfered, and those external actors are sometimes state entities or multinationals who are using state entities and stuff, it becomes complex, and that's the problem. That's the problem we are having in the Eastern DRC. That's the problem we are having in South Kivu and North Kivu. And of course, on top of that, you have the central government in Kinshasa that is not responsive. They have this form of negligence when it comes to dealing with existing conflict. It's the same thing they've done with the Mobondo in is it in Bandundu,
Mhm.
around the Mobondo.
No
It's
wonder.
almost the
Mobondo,
the
yeah.
conflict. People could see that there's an upcoming conflict among these communities. But how did the government react? They neglected the conflict, and it ended up becoming something. It's now becoming something that cannot be easily controlled, where they need to deploy an army and stuff and everything. In the Eastern DRC, it was almost the same thing, but it's something that took time, you know, in order to reach the level where we are right now. And I think at the end of the day, for me, as I always say, the solution is internal. Any possible solution there is internal. We need first and foremost to remove all the external actors that have, interfered into the conflict. Once all the external actors are set apart, all communities, all the people who have their own grievances, they will come together, and the states will mediate and play its role correctly. Where people are not supposed to legitimize violence, like what was used by the M23. That's why I'm saying when I look at what the M23 advocate for, it's completely senseless. How am I saying so? Because you can't claim that you come to liberate an area, you come to end discrimination in an area, while you are killing other people. Let's say perhaps in a city like Bukavu, there is more hatred against the Tutsi community, against the Rwandophone than it was before the M23 came and took over. And that's what they are not realizing, because all the time they've decided to take ammunitions and go and attack other ethnic groups, like perhaps um, um, not not more than 2 days ago, they attacked the residence of the king of Kabare, of the Bash in Kabare and stuff. So
Mm.
the M23 attacked the residents of the Mwami, they vandalized stuff, they killed certain people there in Kabare Sound, claiming that they are supporting Bazalendo and
I
so on.
think I think it's important what you're saying, because you're saying that the M23 that portrays itself as a liberator, as a armed groups that is protecting one minority groups, and I mentioned that the Tutsi and Banyamulenge are actually, and you're saying that they're actually making the situation worse, and then we've seen, and that was kind of like discussed in depth by Kate Hickson, how Amnesty International is documenting these atrocities, that you cannot call yourself a liberator and commit massacre and just slaughter people and enslave kids or enroll them into your military. So you're saying that actually the M23 is exacerbating the situation and not making things better. Is that what you? Is that was that way I'm hearing you from you?
Absolutely. They are not making the situation any better. They are fueling a perpetual vicious cycle of conflicts. Because you can't solve conflicts, you can't pretend to resolve an like a divergence that exists between communities by using force and guns and
Mhm.
equipping one community. Because if you look at the M23 and the way they're structured, people are telling me in Bukavu, they can be tagged. Like you say, you can tag them. So these people are coming from this ethnic group. And in majority, when you look at them, most of their soldiers are Tutsis.
Mhm. And so, yes, sorry, I didn't want to cut you off. Maybe I can. Are you talking?
You said? Can you hear me?
I, yes, now I can hear you. Yeah, I think your mic went
Yes.
off.
Oh, sorry. Um, I was saying, when you look at the M23, in majority of their combatants, they are Tutsis. And when you look at the actions they are conducting on peaceful civilians, or
Hmm.
they are going and killing attacking the traditional symbol of the Bashi, perhaps in Kabari, that's another provocation. They are creating a perpetual vicious cycle of conflict against people that are non-violent, because
Mm.
there is existing conflicts in the region against between ethnic groups. As I said, the Bashi and Barega, an existing conflict, a power struggle between them, which is rough, but they've never resulted to using guns and to fight one another, and they've never one of them has never decided to go and look for a foreign country, become armed militarily with that foreign country to come and produce chaos as the one we are experiencing in North Kivu and South Kivu. So
Yes, yes. Thank you so much. And you actually mentioned something very interesting. And you said, and I'm gonna go with Jakil, that you cannot resolve existing conflicts with guns and violence, and that's exactly what the M23 is doing. So for a few months now, Donald Trump's administration has been involving ongoing talk. They presented that as a peace deal, kind of like exchange or trade minerals in exchange for peace, and that's the government, actually, the Congress government, that had proposed that. And a couple days ago, the Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs and proudly serving by Donald J. Trump said that after 3 days of peace talk led by the U.S. Secretary Advisor for African Affairs, I was honored to witness the initialing of the peace agreement text by the DRC and Rwanda legislations. And I'm gonna go in depth regarding that joint statement, and I'm gonna go with you. On June 18th, technical teams for the Democratic Republic of the Congo and the Republic of Rwanda initial the text for of the peace agreements witnessed by U.S. Undersecretary for Political Affairs Alison Hooker in preparation for the ministerial signing of the peace agreements on June 27th. To be witnessed by U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Building on the Declaration of Principle signed on April 25th, 2025, the agreement was developed over 3 days of the constructive dialogue regarding political security and economic interests. The agreement includes provisions on respect for territorial integrity, and a prohibition of hostilities, disengagement, disarmament, and conditional integration of non-state armed groups. Yekil, doesn't that sound familiar to you?
All that I'm saying is, then again, we've seen it before. This is there is this author John Perkins who wrote the Economic Hitman, and everything that's happening at this very moment is all of that. So they will send someone. They've done that to talk about. Okay, the country has all these potentials for minerals or for money, and then they will say we will come and either build roads or do this or protect you. In this case, for DRC, we will then protect you against Rwanda. You look into Rwanda. I've always denied that they are arming the M23, but here they are sitting with the USA and the Congo to sign a certain deal. So is there is a lot of things going on with this, when you see that Congolese leaders are being treated like children. This is personalism at his worst. Uh, and it is very very sad for Congolese people, but it's good. It's okay to just, we can carry on complaining, but what us as civil society, what are we doing? What are the actions? Yes, we're mentioning we're not going to take weapons. That's not the way. But they say the pen is mightier than the sword, and that's what we should be able to do. Nelson Mandela has stayed in prison for 20 plus years, but when he came out, he was a very well respected a man and was able to destroy apartheid. There is a lot that we can do, and that can only happen with justice. So with all that's been going on, and looking into what's going on at the moment with Iran, Israel, and Ukraine, America will have its hands tight. And like I said earlier, the life of a Congolese person is not on the totem pole. Is very very low on the totem pole. I don't want. I'd rather not be naive and then try to have some false hope and expectations. Or I'm not even far from being cynical, but it's just you have to put things together. You have to look at history. You have to look at, for me, history is facts because it happened. And it is a whole strategy. It's a whole system that it is built on. And we have clues to how the leadership, the Congolese leadership should be behaving. And even us, how we should be behaving, what we need to be doing. It is a long, it's not easy. It is a long road. However, we'll get there because it is just. Our fight is just, is righteous. We are not trying to uh, destroy our neighbors like our neighbors doing to us. We always lived in peace. The Babembe, Balega, Babashi, Banande, there's never been any issues, and we know the history of the Rwandans moving to the Congo. And so, therefore, the peace agreement is, a lot of can be said, but I can only refer to John Perkins, the economic hitman, and you see the patterns of what's happening at the moment being done over and over and over again, and it is disheartening. It's just, it beggars belief if you ask me.
Jessica, what does the DRC diaspora desk think about one, the mineral deals, and what's right now being undertaken by the Trump administration?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically what Yakili mentioned. I mean, yes, of course, it all sounds it all sounds great, and it's, again, repetition of pattern, right? Repetition of history. But unfortunately, again, it's tempered. Again, the UN Security Council resolution 2773 passed on, on February 21st, 2025, hasn't even been implemented, right? And so there's just, then there was, again, amid these peace agreements, there's more escalation of violence, right? So it just shows again that the people that are acting, that are committing these atrocities, are not really deterred by these peace agreements, right? It's not sustainable. And we see, I mean, again, I will refer as a Pan-Africanist, looking at the Sahel states, how they're moving, right? It's possible for us, unfortunately, as a country, as a continent, to prioritize our self-interest by not always by starting to actually act. We have examples of how it can be done, but unfortunately, again, you have these elites that are perpetuating this, that are a part of this. And as Gideon mentioned, right, the external actors that are a part of this, that are perpetuating this as well. So yeah, where I mean, we are it, we want accountability. There's been over 8,000 people that have been murdered. Children are being raped and slaughtered, women especially. Even in times of peace, it was like 50,000 women plus women that were raped in 2024. There's just so much violence. And again, if we do not start prioritizing our lives, why do we expect the world to prioritize our lives, right? We keep blaming, you can keep blaming all these external actors, but really we know what the core problem is, and it is our leadership. It is the elites. We have a country with a country the size of Congo versus Rwanda. We have ministers coming here saying, blaming Rwanda. Yes, of course, but what are you doing to defend the country, right? Let's look at that. Where's the military? What are you, like, basic, right? And even when they're asked about this, oh, excuse me, even when they're asked about this, they just refer back to Rwanda's doing this, Rwanda's doing this. Rwanda's a tiny country. Like, we have more people. Make it make sense. And so without justice, accountability, and a change to this perpetual pattern of fluff, where you know, just the elites are controlling everything, it's essentially it's a meaningless. I don't want to speak for the desk, but you know, they are cautiously optimistic. But we're calling for obviously accountability and justice. But for me, for my platform, it doesn't make any sense to just.
I get it. I get it. I'm not sure if the two of you had the time to actually go through this report. Um, at First of the Congo, every week we're trying to provide updates and discuss, break down, dissect the news regarding the Congo. A lot has happened the past 2 days. I mentioned the joint statement by the U.S. Department of State, but also this report, which to me was really interesting. And I'm gonna read that. We're gonna read that together. It's the Human Rights Watch published that a couple days ago. DR Congo M23 armed groups forcibly transferring civilians. Rwanda as occupying force may be responsible for war crimes. And when I just stop to the title itself, this is ethnic cleansing in a really, when you look at the definition of the international law's definition of ethnic cleansing, removing or forcing folks to literally remove the territories where they live, where they belong. That's exactly what the M23 is doing. But this report is actually particular. I'm just gonna read, I would say, the first two paragraphs. The Rwanda control M23 armed groups has deported over 1,500 people from occupied Eastern DRC to Rwanda in violation of the 1949 Geneva Conventions. Human Rights Watch said today the Rwanda government and M23 should immediately stop forced transfers of Congolese and Rwanda refugees, which are war crimes. I'm going to stop there first. For the first time, I don't think I've seen that in many international outlets or news or even organizations. But Human Rights Watch is actually calling the Kivu region as it is. It says occupied Eastern Congo, just like we've seen when talking about Gaza, when talking about Palestine. People say occupied Palestinian territory, and now they're using that term. They're saying occupied Eastern Congo. And in the second paragraph, which is actually very important, and I'm gonna go with you, Gedeon. Rwanda's military, logistical, and other support to the M23 was critical for its capture of Goma and Bukavu, the provincial capitals of North Kivu and South Kivu, respectively, from Congolese forces in early 2025. In February, the M23 ordered several hundred thousand people to leave displacement camps around Goma and dismantle virtually all the camps. In May, the M23 rounded up and transferred previously displaced people to Goma, where many were unlawfully deported to Rwanda with the assistance of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugee. That's that's big. Like what Human Rights Watch is literally telling us in this report is that the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugee UNHCR is complicit in war crimes, complicit in forcibly transferring civilians, people who live in Goma, people who live in Bukavu, people who live in occupied Congolese territory, forcing them out of their homes to Rwanda, where we don't even know what their fates will be. Gideon.
Yeah, well, it's a completely violation of international law and refugee international law. You can't force a refugee to return to his home country if the person is still facing the same threat. You can't forcefully take people who are displaced or who are seeking refuge and force them to uh, forcibly sending them without their consent to another country, and having UNHCR as a complicit. That's a completely uh, it's an alarming situation. So I think they need to provide an explanation on how they allow themselves as an agency that aims to to protect refugee and assist them. How do they allow such things to happen? Even the destruction of the camp of Kanyaruchinya, Bulengo, they destroy almost an entire camp within few days without the consent of the people. The right of those IDPs was as well violated, because some of these people who fled and who are forced to get out of the camp without any assistance, without any plans, without having any form of planification around that. That was again a violation of human rights. I think what we have here is tangible facts and proofs of uh, crimes against humanity, war crimes committed by the M23 in complicity with a lot of people. So that's why I was saying what we need currently in the Congo is accountability. And I fear that without any possible mechanism of accountability, we'll remain in a perpetual cycle, vicious cycle of violence. If you look at the dynamism and the time frame of conflict in the Eastern DRC, you will come to a conclusion that the conflict is still perpetual today because there's never been an appropriate mechanism of accountability to hold everyone accountable for all the violations of um, possible human rights violations and war crimes, crimes against humanities that have been persecuted within the region.
So you don't think that the peace being brokered right now by the Trump administration in the U.S. will not bring that accountability piece on the table?
Um, I don't think so, because it's a peace deal that doesn't talk a lot about the justice aspect. When
Mm.
we talk about accountability, we look at the justice aspect. How about the people who have been killed? How about their families? How about these refugees who are forced to live under such critical conditions? How about the people who've seen their right being violated? How about the people who saw women being raped in the region? How about those women's?
Mm.
How about all that? We still have mapping reports for many years, but still we are not able to to fulfill that we're not able to take into consideration the mapping reports, just because we live in a situation where people are afraid of that accountability mechanism. And the accountability mechanism is the only thing that is lacking in order to give a release to the people and allow the region to know at least a sustainable peace. That's what we lack.
Yes, thank you so much, Shakil. I'm going to go back with you um, to just read. Yeah, just to read the next paragraphs, which I think is also huge. They said the forcible transfer of civilians to Rwanda, whether Congolese citizens or Rwandan refugees, is a war crimes under the Geneva Convention. Say Clementine de Mont. Oh God, I cannot pronounce Clementine. I'll just say Clementine, senior Great
Oh,
Lakes researcher at Human Rights Watch. Rwanda's control over the M23 in Eastern Congo makes it ultimately responsible for the armed group's numerous abuses. First question to you, because you created, I think, 13 years ago, the Genocost campaign for a reason. Um, why, where do you think, what do you think will happen to those? First of all, let me backtrack. Why are they being removed from where, like, even Congolese citizens, right? And even Congolese citizens are being moved to Rwanda. They are being forcibly sent to Rwanda. First question to you, why do you think this is the case? Why are they being moved to Rwanda? Why are Congolese citizens, according to Human Rights Watch, being forcibly transferred to Rwanda? That's my first question. The second question, what do you think will happen to them? Nikhil?
okay. So I will answer to both questions. So why I can only speculate here. And then again, earlier I mentioned that we have to look at history. Um, when you look at the history of during the Second World War with Nazi Germany, who had they rounded up the Jewish people. They were in all the regions that they occupied, Jewish regions in Europe that they occupied, in France, Belgium, the Netherlands, um, Poland, and also yeah, the region that they actually occupied. They rounded up the Jewish, and then they moved them to a camp in Auschwitz, which is now currently in Poland. And we know what happened in those concentration camps. People were gassed, they were killed, and we had survivors of the Holocaust that happened, and then which is celebrated, commemorated, I should say, every year for some time now. So I can only speculate that's what's going to happen. Also, they could, given that there is a bigger plan, is to have a new population to settle in. So they move one population and bring another, settle them, and then they add the obedience and the beckon and call of the M23. And easily they can say, okay, from now on, we want to be autonomous. We don't want to respond to Kinshasa. We want to be respond to be independent and to create our own country. We've seen that in Sudan. Now we have South Sudan. We've seen that in the history of the world on so many occasions. So I can only speculate on those two reasons of why and what will happen to those Congolese people going to Rwanda. And the reason why the Genocast campaign was launched, like, that commemoration again that the Jewish are able to do, and the Congolese who have suffered in the millions over the years, we do not have a day when we can commemorate that suffering or look into the history of our own. And having a day which is the 2nd of August being commemorated by Congolese all over the world and in the Congo and Friends of the Congo beyond is important. Equally important is the fight for justice. And the fight for justice, it is a long fight, but it is necessary if we really need to bring peace in the whole country. there is a lot of potential that the country has got, and during war, we're not able to actually achieve that because all those resources are going to multinationals who are profiteering from that chaos. And by having the third part of the general cause campaign that the Congolese Action Youth Platform has been advocating for is the to build monuments, to build museums, so history can be taught. So the children, our children, great grandchildren, can also learn what actually happened, so we will not repeat the same mistakes. Because history seems to repeat itself. What we see now, we've seen it happen again 30 years ago, and it's the same process. And we seem not to learn. Unfortunately, it seems like greed is more important for a lot of people rather than their lives. And so that is the key, the three main reasons that the Genocost campaign do exist.
And thank you so much for that. A couple months ago, I hosted with Sylvia Rubuye, co-host at the time, uh, Papa Sly Sylvester Mido, who is the spokesperson of General Council, our comrade, and he essentially broke down uh, the case for genocide in the Congo. That was according to him, his perspective and the perspective of the organization that you're part of, the Congolese Action Group platform that I'm also part of, and the campaign regarding genocide for economic gain. And I found it really interesting, and I thought as you were speaking, that came to mind again. The arguments for genocide, and that's literally that's I'm not making this up. Before people say that I made things up, this is the United Nations Office of Genocide Prevention and the Responsibility to Protect. This is official, y'all. And when you go in the section on genocide, right? Article 2, in the present convention, genocide means any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnical, racial, and religious group as such. One, killing members of the group. Two, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group. Three, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part. Four, imposing measures intended to prevent birth within the group. Five, forcibly transferring children of the group to another. And the element of the crime here, the Genocide Convention established in Article 1 that the crime of genocide may take place in the context of armed conflict, international or non international, but also in the context of peaceful situation. The latter is less common but still possible. The same article established the obligation of the contracting parties to prevent and to punish the crime of genocide. The popular understanding of what constitutes genocide tends to be broader than the content of the norm under international law. Article 2 of the Genocide Convention contains a narrow definition of the crime, which includes two elements. One, the mental element, the intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnical, racial, and religious group as such. And two, a physical element, which includes the following five acts enumerated exhaustively. One, I repeat again, killing members of the group. Two, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group. Three, deliberate inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in parts. Five, imposing measures intended to prevent birth within the group. Five, forcibly transferring children of the group to another. And during that, I thought it was really important to read this again because during that live, we talked about a lot of things. We talked about the genocide. In the live that we do every Friday, we talked about the kind of genocide that happened against the Hutu, right? Like we had the Interamwe that were Hutu that they killed the Tutsi, and then you had that flux of refugees after that, and then they fled because they were afraid of repercussion, and then they came in the Congo in huge numbers. And then once Paul Kagame got to power, he then chased them in the Congo. He chased them to Central. Central African Republic. He chased them to Congo Brazzaville, and essentially, even in the forest, deep in the forest, Hutu refugees in refugee camps. And our brothers here, they don't talk about some of the massacre that happened in refugee camps. Ting Ting and other mentioned in details, mapped in the mapping report, the United Nations document. So they were targeted. Refugees, Rwanda refugees were targeted. Civilians were targeted. Congolese were targeted. That's why the Hutu, the Rwanda Hutu, says that yes, there was also a genocide against us, against them, against the Hutu. And then you also saying that, and brother Papa Sly said that there was also a genocide. There has been a genocide against Congolese people as well. And when you see, and that's your takes on that, when you see the Congolese people are being taken by force, children, women, and and men being taken by force and being sent to Rwanda, a country they don't even belong to, and you claiming it's because they want to depopulate the Congo or that area for the main purpose to claim years later that that territory or the people, because it's kind of like hard to do it, or it's also expensive to do it by force, like they have tried for the past 3 decades now. Now they're trying another way to do that, just like we see in the Middle East, and that's just a sad comment, to empty that population to justify maybe like how they are to justify how they are uh, exploiting minerals without worried about the population living there. How they can justify uh, those countries becoming, I will say, let me say independent, because I don't want to say that they're gonna join Rwanda by becoming independent. That was your own word, brother Yakil. But are you in the same position as brother Sly? That's what we seen is in the Congo is just that, like the genocide. You are in the same opinion.
Of course. I mean, this is something that we have looked into all those years ago, the definition of genocide, and we've seen that it applies to us, but nobody was talking about it. All they were saying it was just a ethnic conflict,
Ethnic. Hmm.
and then we thought, no, I mean, and then as well, sometimes people talk about war. A war is when someone fights and then you fight back. It seems like we've just been beaten up in a way where there's no real reply to the aggression that the Congolese people are suffering from. The government is very inactive, but that's a whole other conversation. But what it actually is, with we looked at the definition of genocide, and Congo, and he applied on so many with all the point that you actually read on there. So now there is a different phase. It seems like it's Machiavellic plan. That's why I say I'm only speculating. Time will tell what actually is being worked in the darkness, in dark room, in private rooms, under the tables, and so forth. All I can do is to look at history, which are facts, and seeing how the system operates, what's been done before, what's been done in the. We have to look at. We have to not be naive, but just also look at how the African person is being treated all over the world. There are so many things. I mean, you have to look at someone's actions, not what they say. I mean, we have to at one point we have to be stop being naive. I cannot think of any other words. And so we've looked into that, and we didn't want to just being told what to think in a way, or think, oh yeah, no, you're fine. You just this is just what's happening. And sadly, there are agents of within ourselves who don't want the justice to happen, who don't want the things to go to for the nation to be at peace, because then again, they're benefiting from the chaos. However, nothing is eternal. Justice or what's right should definitely happen. It might take a while, it might take long, but it will definitely happen because we believe that we are right. At CAYP, we believe that we are right, and then our fight is just. And we want more and more people to understand and see it from our own eyes, to educate themselves, to join us in the campaign that we have, because it is just, it is right. A word with without the Congo will be completely different. When you drive in Belgium, the motorway, most, like I could say 90 to 95% is lit. So that is the copper that they have to use to put into to have the light, and they got it from the Congo. You look at now the industry of automobile at the turn of the 20th century. It was then again thanks to the Congo. The Second World War, America won it thanks again to the uranium of the Congo. You look into, we all have laptop, mobile phones. Is then again Congo. We are the lungs of the earth. So it is crucial, it is key, it is important. Why do the Congolese people have to suffer? Why can they not also take part why can they not also take part into the benefits? So that we have infrastructure, so there is good roads. But then again, looking at the history, that was done on purpose. Walter Rodney said it clearly how Europe underdeveloped Africa. He explained it in details why the continent is the way it is, and Congo more so. For to understand what Walter Rodney said in his book, you also have to read Eric Williams' Slavery and Capitalism to make sense of all the system that actually lead to the country that we are from. Is suffering, is going through what it is going through. Um, and at the same time, I think you show in an article about the New York Times to say the Congo let it fall apart. A sense of
Yes.
pressure coming.
Yes, and that article from I think that was Peter Famine. He was under Trump's first term. He's special envoy in a Great Lake region, so it's not just someone that is saying his piece or his opinion. It was someone who had power to influence the president policy in Africa and Congo in the Great Lake region, and that's essentially what he was saying, arguing that Congo was too big with all the issues that Gedeon on kind of like mentioned with ethnic divisions. Like we have divisions everywhere. We have conflicts and issues everywhere. But he was essentially saying that, hey, yo, like if you want to save the Congo right now, it costs too much money to save it. All these accord, all these peace deal, all this money being sent, we should just let Congo fall apart so that we get to the points that we are right now, where you have a bit of Congo divided among nations surrounding it, or divided among nations, just like it was honestly designed in the first place, right? Like the intent when Congo was designed, when Congo was built at the Berlin Conference, was never for the Congolese people to have control of their own affairs. The Congolese people, not just the Congolese people, I have to say the allies from Americas, the writers for Europeans that wrote on behalf of Congolese people, that literally raised awareness for what was going on in the Congo. They came and disrupted that intent, that goal of having peace of the Congo being shared among nations, because that's essentially what it was at the Berlin Conference. And King Leopold II was only that broker, was only that businessman that was there, that was chosen, that was appointed to facilitate the plan of the Congo. That's essentially what happened 140 years ago, right? We are, I think, this year celebrate the 140th anniversary, and you are showing us a really nice book. I cannot read it. Can you read it?
Yeah, it is The Scramble for Africa by Thomas Pakenham. And then
Yes.
it's quite a thick book. And then, yeah, so to add on to what you're actually saying about Leopold the Second, Africa has been spliced as a cake because of Leopold II. He was a cunning sovereign. He did not do it. He actually played France, Great Britain, Spain, and Prussia, Germany at the time. Uh, he played them in a way to make them sit down around the table and tell them to with some fallacies about civilization, commerce, and Christianity, and as a way to actually split the continent. So he was always behind, uh, pulling all the strings, and he made sure while everybody else was busy doing the other things, he was getting the best piece, which was the Congo. Then again, these are facts, these are history. The A country that belonged to an individual is almost like slavery reborn. 1830 slavery actually was abolished, but then again, you just give it another 50 years for slavery to start back again. um, so yeah. Like just a great book. So it is sad that we going through like the motion for the
Cycle.
whole system.
Mm-hmm.
What the author of that article, the New York Times, is saying is only for the benefit of the West, but from a human being's level. What I mean, human beings level, that's from a Congolese person to an American person to sit fairly and say, okay, this is what I have. What do you have? Let's work together so the whole world can benefit. There is enough for everybody. Unfortunately, greed is at the core of this, because the next man wants to have more than his brother, and that's what can cause a lot of strife around the world. So I do not believe that for Congo to be to save the Congo, you have to let it fall apart. We were able to live, even though it is for me one of the first multicultural society ever, having 250 tribes together, living together in harmony. Um, if we had a strong leadership that was not affected by any foreign powers, yes, the Congo will probably be not just G20, probably G7 with all the things that we do have. But you look at the history and so many other things, and I can only refer then again to people who are interested to read Walter Rodney, because how Europe underdeveloped Africa is one of the great tragedy of human mankind history, because I think
Yes.
it's a whole system that was done on purpose to maintain the continent in subservient to the West, and it's a very through various kind of system and strategies. And it is important to know it so we can find solutions, move above it, and be able to speak from a position of strength and power.
And just to go back, and Gideon is back. Let me bring him up. And just to kind of like give a context, right? If my memory is correct, in 2012, during that time, that was when the M23. I would say 1.0, right? Because what we're seeing today is M23 2.0, was literally creating chaos in the Kivus during that time, and there was some conversation regarding like what should be done against Rwanda, against Paul Kagame, against the M23. Should we encourage them? Should we put sanction on Rwanda? And it was at that period, at that time, that he published this, right? And another article that came out a couple years ago, by the Atlantic, even suggesting that the war in the Congo is essentially keeping the planet cooler. That I think the argument was that the natives were not cutting trees anymore because they're busy running away or something like that. That was a couple years ago, but to me, it was kind of really crazy to put the blame of the population because they do know, and we talk about it in Basanja Coalition when they kind of like discuss what the nature means for them. They're not they that the people natives they don't just go and cut trees, right? They plant trees too. They also know how to honor the nature that surrounds them because they live because of that. It's not like those multinationals that just come cut trees and leave, right? Like without even providing jobs or making sure that what they are exploiting is not polluting the environments. They don't make sure of any of that. So I think it was, as you were talking, I thought it was really important to show, because you did say at the beginning, you and Jessica, that no one's going to come and save Congolese folks, because yes, Congo has uh, allies, and that's why we exist in this pan-African mentality, in that pan-African spirit that Friends of the Congo was created in 2004. But it would also be, I would say, naive to think that if we just let the elite right now in power, and that can bring me to the next point, that suddenly things would get better for the Congo. So I think we're gonna wrap up, and I'm gonna go with Gedeon. And we talked about the M23. We talked about the NBA contracts that they needs to kind of like do more of a vetting process to make sure that the atrocity happening or perpetrated by the Rwanda government is not uh, they're not the money doesn't come from those, and it doesn't come, it's not a result of that war crimes. We talked about the August 30th massacre in Goma, which implicated the Congolese government led by President Tshisekedi today, where at least hundreds of civilians were killed. And it's literally one of the tweets that I pinned on my X profile. Uh, you can just see the gravity and also the violence at which the Congolese government, sworn to protect the civilians, didn't mind killing demand killing civilians, demand killing their own people with weapons coming ironically from Israel, because there was a partnership at that time. That was right before the war on Gaza started. The Israeli government was training the presidential guard, right? And then the munitions, the weapons were coming from Israel, were provided by the Israeli government. And we've seen that how foreign governments are training Congolese soldiers, Congolese forces, to essentially teach them how to oppress their own people, right? And we talked about the M23, how it's backed by Rwanda, and some UN reports do mention the presence of foreign weapons on Congolese soil, including Israeli weapons as well. That was documented in a couple reports, UN reports ago. Talks about that it was talking about the presence of some Israeli made weapons found on the battlefield, and the United Nations trying to ask for more clarification to the Israeli government, but they've never heard any response on that. So it's very important to highlight those key actors. But Gedeon, I want us to focus on the Congolese part. What is the Congolese government's responsibilities and what's going on in the region that you from? Uh, in the eastern, in Congo, the eastern part of the Congo, that Human Rights Watch right now describe as the occupied Congolese territory.
Well, the Congolese government is the same everywhere. Like if you go to Kasai, if you go to Maniema, that's why I was saying that it's not. Um, it doesn't. The situation, the way it is, the way it's prevailing, doesn't give any sort of legitimacy to people to pick up guns and go against the civilians, because they don't go against the government. The establishment is sitting there living their life peacefully. The leaders, these people pretend to fight against, they are living their life peacefully, but who is suffering right now is the people who are caught under all this. It's the people who are forced um, they are forced to become IDPs in their own country. When you look at the Congolese government and the way it behaves, it's completely unacceptable. We have to acknowledge today that we have a failure of leadership. We've had a failure of leadership, and that's the main, absolutely the main reason why the country is the way it is right now. And failing to acknowledging that is a completely wrong way of conducting an analysis concerning what is prevailing. If you've read a book called The Looting Machine, you will understand that we are just dealing with a new form of new bourgeois. They've created a new bourgeoisie, people who are called middlemen, compradors. Their role is to exploit both natural resources, manpower, at their own advantage and at the advantage of those companies that receive the dividend at the international level, the multinationals. Because our governments, the way they operate,
Oh,
Did we lose Gideon? Yes, we did. We lost Gideon. Yakil, what's the government's responsibility, or like in what is going on? If Congolese governments are listening to this, what would you tell them?
accountability. Uh, be more responsible. Listen, it's they have to in a way they're first of all it's not legitimate. They're not legitimate. I see Gedeon is back. They're not legitimate as we know that Chisekedi actually was nominated by Kabila. So they are not the people who should have fixed so many other things in our country. And so but when you live in a country where criminals of war are being put in position of power, even in recently we had the space CYP General Cons had the space on X, uh, where one of the witness of the war, the 6 days war of Kisangani between 5th of June 2000 and 10th of June 2000, and one of the witness of that war said something very poignant when he said they had nominated a former war criminal as the chief of police back in 2022. So it sends the wrong message. Sometimes we have to look at so many things that we do. We had someone who were embezzled about $100 million with uh, was it prefabricated houses,
Mm.
and he is now like he sits in the Senate,
Yeah,
or is it the
National Assembly. National Assembly.
National Assembly? He sits on the
Mm-hmm.
National Assembly, and it's just beggars belief. What do you tell the children? What do you tell them? It's like it's okay to steal. Just give it 2 3 years, you'll be free, and then you'll carry on doing the same thing again. So we have to look at ourselves as well, because those politicians are the mirror of our society. So because we allow certain things to happen, that's why they are able to do so. If we had a limit, in many cases, you understand what I'm saying, Tokome Sana, we have that
Mm.
kind of laxism, that kind of it's okay, we'll be all right. Oh, let's just wait. Where is the red line? Where do we say stop? Where do we say no? Where is our boundaries? It seems like we have a high level of tolerance, and sometimes I think all the nations, whether the Nigerians, Cameroonians, people from Ivory Coast, or even our neighbors from Congo Brazzaville, and even the Rwandans, they probably laugh. They look at certain things that's happening, they laugh. And in some conversation, we could say, you hear people say, oh, never mind, we'll discuss it amongst ourselves, but nothing gets done because we'll just forgive and then move on and hoping things will be okay. There has to be boundaries. We have to learn to say no. There has to be certain things as a human being, have that integrity to say enough is enough. There are certain things we will not accept as a nation. Unfortunately, we have not reached that level yet, and that is the sad reality.
Thank you so much, Akil. Gedeon, you back, and we lost you for a second, and then we had to move on. But yeah, essentially, we wrapping up. So if a if folks from the government were listening, and I'm sure they're listening to us right now, what would you tell them? And that's one part. That's the first part. And what is the government responsibility in everything that is happening in the Congo, particularly that the Congolese, the occupied Congolese territory?
I think the government plays an important role because look, we live in a modern society and we are all bounded by what is called a social contract. We give a certain rights and liberty to the government so that they can protect us and establish important conditions for all human beings in the Congo to thrive and to live their life decently. And we are blessed to have a land that is blessed. But when we look at the behavior of leadership, the behavior of individuals who are in a position of power in the DRC, is completely inadmissible. As you said, there's no any other country that can tolerate the way the politicians are leading the Congo. There is no any single population outside Congolese that have such a high level of tolerance to mediocrity, such a high level of tolerance to thieves, such a high level of tolerance to incompetent individuals who have no clue on how to run the state pretty well. Look, we might say anything, but the biggest problem of the DRC is the Congo itself. How come the Congo is the biggest problem to itself? Because we've allowed individuals who are unfit to be our mirror, to be our voice. Individuals who are not fit to lead us. And that's why we are dealing with a lot of issues. When you hire incompetent people, what do you expect in your company? Problems, issues to deal with every single day. And that's the case in the DRC. But the problem is it has now become a network of people who have taken us, all of us, under hostage. And that's where things are that's where things have turned to. So the solution is to have a change of leadership. And when we talk about change of leadership, it's not change of individual. The change of mindset of leadership. People who are in power should shift their mindset and know that we are accountable. We are not here to enjoy the privileges that come with the power we have, but we're here to be accountable to the population. We appoint leaders so that they can represent the most vulnerable among ourselves and not oppress the most vulnerable, like what is prevailing in the DRC. So we need a responsible leadership, we need accountability, and we need the leadership, a leadership that respects the dignity of all Congolese people.
Yes, and thank you so much. I think Yakil, both Yakil and Jadon, you guys have been a little bit too harsh on the Congolese folks. So I want to bring the temperature down. And to be frank, right, I do agree to certain extents when you both of you said that it's kind of our fault, the fault of the Congolese folks in terms of how we have somehow allowed. But the place where I want to disagree, because I don't want us to portray this picture of Congolese people doing nothing, and I think that's not what we're doing. Like Congolese people are not doing it, like they're not doing nothing, and I think the two of you being present and talking, and I briefly highlighted the type of work that you guys have been doing, is itself a testimony that Congolese are organizing, the Congolese are active, right, into making sure that they are taking into their own hands the situation, what's going on. They are raising awareness, they are organizing, they are protesting, they are marching, they are coming on social media platform and talk about the situation of the Congo. And people in the Congo themselves, like the folks in Kinshasa, the folks in Goma that we talked about, they're also organizing, they're also protesting. And it's very, very important to highlight what happened to them when they do organize. And we talked about this during the show. They are being slaughtered, they are being killed by both the government and those people who claim to liberate themselves, they liberate them. They are being rounded up and being sent outside of their homes. They are being literally trapped into this death sentence. If you don't die with bullets, you die of hunger. If you don't die of poverty, you die of lacking freedom. And that's very important for us to show that aspects, that the context in which the Congolese people are right now living, that makes it almost impossible for them to organize. And the very few Congolese folks that do organize, we know what happens to them. Because, like Yaki, you said, history is facts because it already happened. We know it happened, therefore it's fact. You say that. So I think I'm kind of like wanted to not have us being hopeless, right? And saying that it's our fault. Yes, we have also, the Congolese people also have responsibility in what's going on, but we should not give the impression that we're not doing anything, or that we're just sitting there and doing like, and literally just letting the country going away or being sold. Folks are organizing, whether it's the opposition or the civil society. There's facts that I mentioned that I read came directly from the civil society. And my mom Mimi from Congolese Action Group platform, she keeps telling me, you need to talk to the folks on the ground to really understand what's going on. People are not sleepy. They are awake. They are documenting. They are talking. They are organizing. They are protesting, and they are even risking their own lives. And that's something that I wanted to kind of like mention. And I'm gonna give you, the two of you, maybe 2 minutes to kind of like conclude this space of this wonderful time that we had together. Yeah, Kill. Yeah, Kill.
Sorry.
Yeah, that I know it's midnight where you are, and I really appreciate you taking the time to talk, and that's why we're gonna wrap up. Maybe like you have one more thing to say before we end the show.
Yeah, so my final words will be just to remind people and Congolese friends of the Congo and Congolese people that on the 2nd of August, we will be commemorating the Genocost, which is the genocide for economic gain. And various cities around the world will be organizing the event. We'll do one in London, Paris, and in Germany as well, Dusseldorf, if I'm not mistaken. And obviously, for more information, I invite people to go to genocost.org for more information on the work that we've been doing for the past 13 years and growing. So that will be my final word. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And again, I appreciate. I'm so sorry I kept you awake. You literally joining us from the UK. It's midnight over there, but always have the energy and the time to speak for Congo. I appreciate your time and thank you so much. Gideon, you have maybe something that you want to mention
Yeah.
before I end the show?
So the message is, as a final message, there is hope. Yeah, there is hope for the Congo. There's hope because there is a lot of resilience, as you said. We've seen a lot of initiatives. We've seen a lot of Congolese trying to achieve greatness for the collective good. And that's the spirit we want to see. That's the spirit we want to see becoming an habit. We want to see it becoming more perpetual. We want to see it being spread all over. There is hope, of course, but we also have we need to have the courage to face the reality and accept that we also have the responsibility to play a role in everything that is prevailing in our country. We need collective effort in order to tackle some of the most pressing challenges facing the DRC. And the only way to do it is to shift our mindset. And if we believe that we already have a mindset that is enlightened, let's do the same thing for others. Because trust me, if we don't have a collective mindset, it will be tough for us to bring appropriate changes in the DRC and bring people to more awareness and more responsibility, to be more demanding on accountability, and who have a type of leadership that is willing to deliver, and not the leadership that is there to cry and not being able to provide to the people of the Congo.
Thank you so much for the both of you. This is it. This is the end, and I'm gonna encourage you. First of all, I'm gonna thank everyone watching, tuning in, and friends of the Congo, whether it's on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, on X, for watching and interacting and asking questions and just being with us. We're gonna encourage you to sign the petition for the justice for Goma, the August 30th massacre. Sign the petition for the NBA. Ask the NBA help stop rising violence in the DRC. Uh, uh, this is a petition that Amnesty International had put forward. Please, if you have the time and if you're seeing this, type Amnesty International NBA petition and you'll be able to see the link. Click on that and please join us into asking the NBA to essentially review its partnership with Rwanda amidst of the M23 atrocities. Don't just scroll, right? Don't just watch us. Don't just message us, but please take actions. And we keep saying that as Friends of the Congo. There are multiple ways that you can take action. At Friends of the Congo, we encourage you to join, to go on freecongo.org to see the 3 steps, 3 ways for you to be involved and to take actions. You can be involved, you can donate, you can join us and to continue to raise awareness because we believe that justice for the Congo starts with the truth and it ends with your voice. Thank you all. Yakil, Gedeon, thank you so much for being with us. So I will see you guys next week, next Friday, same time, same place. Yeah, catch you soon.
Thank you. Bye.